Okay. Sorry, can you hear me? I took off my microphone just to make it easier to screen
That's
record.
perfect.
Okay. So now we're creating a custom block type. So this is like the structured data for a block. So we created the new logo type. So if you go in and you click Manage Fields to the right of logo, yep. So from here, you'll be able to add a bunch of custom fields. We don't really need a body field so you can actually click to the right of where it says edit and then click delete. Yeah, you can delete that. We don't need that. Now our logo basically has two components. Yep, you can click delete there, and that's just deleting some configuration that lives in the background. And so if we think about like a logo, it needs to do two things, right? Like it needs to have an image and it needs to have a link to go somewhere, right? So basically we want to add two fields. So if you click on the add field button there, and then you under the left, yeah, and click image, it would be under, yep, reference, perfect. And then you can name it whatever you want. You could call it image if you want. And then save that. And all this information is fine for now. We only want one image, so we can save those field settings. We don't need a default image or anything like that. You could do one if you want to do the NBER logo as a default. That's fine.
Yeah, just so I can get a feel.
Yeah.
Just the placement of it. I'm not. So save it here.
Yep. Save it there. Okay. And then if you go down to the bottom, you just save again. That was the field settings. This is the field instance settings. You can have many instances of these fields. So so it looks like we're requiring alt text. That's fine. That's a good thing to have. So that's for accessibility reasons. Now the next field we want is a link field exactly. Save that. Yep, we only want one link per component. And then, yep, you can put a default there if you want. So you can do like, whatever you want the home page to go to.
I don't need to put any backslashes, anything.
No, I think you might need to. I'm not sure for an external link. You might want to have HTTP there first or HTTPS, but yeah. So then you do like HTTPS, colon. Yep, there you go. That's right. And then the link, whatever. We don't really we actually don't really need link text for what we're doing, but you could put it if you want, because basically we're going to make our image linked, which it might be a little that process is maybe possibly a little bit more than we'll cover on the call, but I can like point you in the right direction for doing that. And so that's good there. We want both that, so you can save those settings. That's fine. And then so we have the two fields that are required for us. One thing we might want to do is you can do something called image styling or image caching, and basically what that does is it will automatically try to crop and scale images when you upload them. And what that helps with is, if you have a big image or like the image is not appropriately sized for where you're trying to do it, it'll automatically try to do some of those adjustments for you. So that's probably a good thing to put in here. So one thing I might do is open in a new tab the configuration. So if you just hold down Control and click on configuration in the top menu, that'll open it in a new tab. Okay, yep. And then, yep, and click over there for a second. And then look for the image settings. If you scroll down a little bit, image styles, exactly. Click those. So we have these defaults to us. We have large, medium, and thumbnail. Let's create a custom one. So click the button that says Add Image Style. Call it Logo. And then create new style. And let's add an effect. So down below where it says select effect, let's select crop and scale, or scale and crop all the way at the bottom. Let's add that. And here's where you'd set. So I don't know how big you want what you could do is you could look at your old the old subsites and see how big the logo is, but it's probably something like, I don't know, 80 pixels by 30 pixels or something like that, right? So like whatever you want that.
It's 90.
Oh, it's 90. Okay, so yeah, I'd put in those dimensions here. So 90 by whatever.
I don't ever is.
Yeah.
90 by 90?
Yeah, and you can always change these settings too. Like if it doesn't look quite right, you can come back and edit these. So now basically whenever an image is uploaded, it's going to try to crop and scale it to 90/90. So this looks fine. So now if you go back to...
Wait, whenever an image is going to be uploaded, now this is going to be specific to just the logo. Because like on the home page, we're going to have like a big image, right?
Yep. So whenever I try to create components or anything on a website, I generally try to make it abstract enough where it's not only... I mean, we might only use it in one place. We might only put the logo here, but like by making this logo component, we open ourselves up for the possibility of uploading, different logos or different places, right? So like when you create these different components, I like to think of them in an abstract way, so they could potentially be used in a different place at a different time if we ever need it. So say for instance we have like a logo that we want to put in the footer. All of a sudden we say like, oh, we want the thing that's kind of in the header, but we want it in the footer. Instead of going and creating all this again, we get to use the same structure that we used initially. And that's why typically when I name things, like I probably wouldn't put homepage image and homepage link, because there's a chance we might want to use them on an internal page or something else too. So we're just kind of creating the structure right now, and we'll create the instance in a minute. But we just want basically a form that we can use that will give us what we want. And we want it kind of abstracted as much as possible. Of course, in this case, we're probably only going to use it one time, so it's not really a big deal. But that's just kind of the mentality I'm in when I'm creating some of this stuff. So this, not only can this image style be used different places, we could use this in other places besides our logo block that we're working on. We could use this throughout the site in views or wherever we want. But for now, I think it's fine there. So let's go back over to the next tab that we're to the left here, where we're managing our field settings. And in here, so if you go to the Manage Display tab at the top left, there's, yeah, exactly. If you click that. And so here you can set a lot of different settings. So this is how the things that you save are actually going to be displayed. So if you look at the image home and you look all the way to the right, there's a gear icon. If you click that little gear, you can actually change the image style. So right now it's just going to upload whatever the original image is there. If you click that, you can actually choose our new logo image style there. And so basically what that's going to try to do, oh, and actually look at this. You can link it to something, but we won't worry about that right now. So you can only link it to either the content or file. That's not going to help us. So we'll save that. So now when we upload images to this kind of block, it'll get that automatic image style. And then what we have to do is eventually we're going to have to theme our link so our link goes around our image. But let's not worry about that quite yet. Okay, so we have this new thing. We can save this at the bottom left there, that little save button. And we've basically created the basic structure that's needed for creating this logo that's going to go in our header, right? So let's go back to the block layout. So if you go to structure again, and you go to block layout, yep. And so in the header, so you see where it says site branding. So that's our the sub-site heading right here. So if you go to place block above that section there, we can place a new block here. And if you search for logo, add custom block, that button at the top actually. Oh, no, back where you were. So click place block again. And then click add custom block. And it's going to ask us what type of custom block we want to add. We want to add a logo block. And we can call this whatever you want, NBER home or whatever you want it to be. And here you could go and you could upload an image. We should already have the default image there, I believe, but you could go and try to grab one of those if you'd like, or you could leave it as the default. And you could actually just go ahead and save this if you wanted. It's going to give you so this is kind of where it's messed up. Yeah, you have to set that region again. That should have automatically got populated, but there's some kind of bug in Drupal, I think, right now. So down at the bottom where it says region and it's a required field, yeah, set that to the header and then save that block. And in that section there's a lot of display settings you could do. Like you could choose what type of users see this thing or what type of pages that it appears on. In our case, we want it to appear on every single page for all users, right? So we have that new block there. And if you actually go back to like your home page and you look at it, you should see a new kind of like logo. It's not going to look super pretty right now, but there should be something uploaded to it. So if you like go back to site at the top. Okay. So that's our image there. It's a little funny, right? It's cropped kind of funny there. It has, and actually we have to go back to we would want to go back to are we on the right site right now? I wonder if we're on the right site because we're not on the theme site actually. So if you click what? Yeah, so the theme. So maybe the theme was changed here. So let's go to appearance again, I guess. The appearance tab. Yeah, click that. And okay, scroll. So we have to set the Drupal 8 W3 CSS. Oop. Can you go back to the list actually? Go back to yeah. So we're set somehow. Bartik got set back as the default. So we have to click see where it says the theme that you wanted. Yeah, that one there. Yeah, click set that as default. So you already created a sub theme too. That looks like that's great.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that. No. I want this one as default. But yeah, I did create a sub theme. I haven't done anything with it yet.
Yep. It's actually better to use a sub theme because that's going to allow us to do customizations that won't get overwritten when if we ever upgrade our theme. So I would actually set the sub theme as the default if you can. So see that.
Okay, so right now this is what we're supposed to.
Yeah. So what's that?
Why does it have 3 homes?
Oh, I'm not exactly sure. Something weird's happening with the breadcrumb settings there. Can you go back to the appearance section real quick? If you scroll down, so we actually probably want to set the sub theme there as the default. Try setting that real quick.
But by setting this, all the settings that I've already done are going to be gone, right?
Probably. So which settings? So you've done settings in like the settings format here. Can you go back to the home page? I can see. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So like the colors and things like that. Yeah. So
Colors, I got rid of the sidebars.
yeah. So my suggestion is to I would go back and I would redo those settings in the sub theme because so what's going to happen is we're going to go through and we're going to actually add some customizations to the theme. Like if you want custom fonts on your theme, you have to do that in your theme settings. And if you do stuff like that custom in the base theme, and then if you ever upgrade that theme, you have a chance of losing those settings. So by doing it in a sub theme, you get to inherit all the parent stuff from the parent theme, but you get to write your own customizations on top of it without worrying about losing that stuff. So I would definitely suggest kind of going through and customizing the sub theme if it's not like overly burdensome to do that.
Okay, I will do that. But for the rest of this screen share, can we use the theme so that we can see
Sure.
how it looks and stuff?
Sure. Let's do that. So do you want to switch back to the other one then? Yeah.
Yeah, just because I know the colors and the placement, what I've done so far.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and again, we're gonna have to go back to our. So we set the header up for the Bartik theme. So let's go back to structure and let's do that real quick for this theme here. Block layout. Yep, place the header.
No.
Yep, that's the right stuff. Oh, sorry. No, that's the right one. Yep, Drupal 8 theme there. Yep, so let's place it here, and then add your custom block. Oh, there you go. Yeah, you can place that. Yeah, you're right. You got it. That's right. And then, yep, save that. Great. And if you go to home page, okay, so you have the image there. So there's a couple things going on here. One is the labels for the fields are showing up, which we don't really want. And two, the title for the block is showing up, which we don't really want. And then three, we really want the link to be hidden and just be an image that is clickable. So that one's going to be the most work to do, but the first two are pretty easy. So if you go back to your structure, block, custom block types, and then custom block library at the top there, and then block types at the top, right below custom block library. Yep, exactly there. And then you go into next to the logo. If you click to the right and you click Manage Display again. Yep. And then see where it says Label and where it says Above. You can go and you can hide those first of all. So yeah, exactly. So you can say Visually Hidden or Hidden. Either way, either one of those is fine. And then save that form. So that will hide the labels for those. On our actual blocks, if you go back to custom block library, if you look at the breadcrumbs there where it says logo, click down a little bit. Oh, that's fine. You can do it this way too. That's fine.
Custom block library?
You can actually do it right here. So you can go into where it says logo. You can go to configure. Yep, and click configure there. And then you can see where it says display title. You can uncheck that and save that. So we don't want to, we don't want to display the title. So we'll save that. Okay. Great. Yep, back to site. And then, so now you're going to just see the logo and the nber.org. So there's a couple things another thing we might want to adjust is that image style. So like if you look back at your image style, it looks like the logo is getting kind of cut off in like a weird way. You might want to make like the height smaller than the width. So I don't know, make the width a little longer, maybe make the height a little shorter. You can play around with those settings, but if you save them like in real time, it should update. So like that tab to the right.
Let me just I should have done this ahead of time.
And so the beauty of image styles is it makes it so, you know, ideally if they're done appropriately, it makes it so the content editor doesn't have to go and open up Photoshop and like adjust the images. Ideally it would go and it would actually just make it so it uploads in a consistent way each time. But of course, you know, a lot of that comes down to like having the image style appropriately configured, and that's, you know, takes a little tweaking sometimes to get it like that.
Okay, so where should I go now?
So if you have a second tab open in your window right now. If you just click the tab to the right, click that. You could just go in there and you could click edit to the right of the 9090, and you could just play with those for a little bit and try to get that a little better. I might try something like 120/30 or something like that and see what happens there. See if it makes it better or worse, and then you can kind of go from there. I'd do like just 30. I wouldn't do 130. I think that's.
Oh, I mean,
that's okay. Yeah, yeah, and try that, and then I mean, it's sometimes it's hard to get these things right. Sometimes it is easier to just do the Photoshop thing, but um,
Yeah.
sometimes you can make a big difference here. So if you just click your other tab again, yeah, click that, and then reload that page and see if that makes a difference. So yeah, I mean, it's starting to look better.
But
And then
placement on it though, because
yeah, so this is starting to get into some of the theming stuff, right? There are some there's some core placement things that are happening now that are pretty exciting, but they're kind of experimental. So I don't, first of all, I'm not an expert in them, so me trying to figure them out on the fly on the call might not be the best use of our time. But the next step here really would be theming. So there's a couple things that go into making theming easier, and they're going to be kind of hard to cover on the call. So basically, my hope is to point you in the right direction to work on some of this stuff. But the first one is turning on something called Twig Debug. So have you ever looked at the page source of like the website? Like if you right click on something, like for instance, where the NBER logo is, if you right click on that and you click inspect element. So this will give you some information about what's going on in your theme. So what's kind of cool is, so Drupal is sometimes kind of difficult because when the page is being constructed, it's actually using a variety of different templates to build the structure of the page. So it's like it's using a large template to bring all the regions together. Then it's using smaller templates for each field and everything like that. So each block has its own template. So these things get rather complicated pretty quick. And it's hard to know exactly where some of this HTML markup's coming from. So one thing you want to do is, and I definitely, you might write this down, is just I would look up turning on Twig Debug, and it's something you can do in your development settings. So there's a services.development.yaml file, YML file, and there's a yeah, exactly. So development.services.yml. And I'm sorry, this is a little complicated. So I don't want to like say it's like there's a couple moving parts here. So basically, in order to turn on your development services YAML file, you're going to have to probably enable it in your settings.php file. And there's tutorials about how to do this, but basically, you would enable that, and once that's enabled, you can put in a little bit of YAML syntax, which is just key value pairs, and basically you would say turn on the Twig debugging configuration. And what happens when you turn that on is basically in your HTML markup, which you're looking at on your right hand side, it will tell you little prompts about which template files are creating which pieces of markup, and what that allows you to do is actually go and override stuff. So for this, I know for a fact for this little NBER block with the www.nber.org, we're going to want to overwrite this specific block template, and we're going to have to make our own markup to make sure that we have the URL being an href on an anchor tag. And sorry, are you pretty familiar with HTML, or am I losing you a little bit?
I am.
Okay, so like like an href on an anchor tag, right? Like an A tag, that's like where the actual link goes, right? So you're basically going to set up a template so the href on this anchor tag goes to nber.org, which is the value that you inputted there, and you're going to make your logo be a linked image instead of a link and an image, if that makes sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah, it's a lot. I apologize. Definitely, I totally understand that that's a lot right there. That's like a lot of things to be thrown at you. So it's definitely going to require some research, and this is kind of so Tim and I talked about this a little bit. This is where it does become kind of challenging, because it's hard to some of these concepts. Although I think if we looked at code together, they're not overly complicated, but they take a lot to understand when we're just kind of like talking at a high level here. So I would say hopefully you can take some of what I'm saying here, and you can look up some of this stuff, and maybe have Alex and some people on your team help you take a look at it if they have availability. And I think Tim would be familiar with this as well. And if that is proving to be challenging to figure it out that way, then I would say just loop Tim and I back in together, and we can explain the challenges and see where we can go from there. But hopefully you can take what I'm saying and at least, have a good point to like a point of entry for researching this stuff a little further. I just think it's going to be, it's a little bit nuanced to get the settings correctly, and it's hard to do without actually looking at code specifically, if that makes sense. So there's a couple things that need to happen. Again, to recap, one is you want your debug settings on so you can see where these templates are actually being generated from. So that's like step one, right? Because it's going to be hard to override these settings without knowing where they're coming from. So turning Twig Debug on, if you're going to research that, that's step one. Yep, Twig. Twig. Yeah, so Twig is a PHP templating language. And what that means is it's just a way to basically write HTML templates with a nice syntax that has like curly brackets for variables and things like that. It's just an easier way to write HTML template files. So step one is turn on the Twig debug settings. That's going to happen in your services development services file. Step two is you're going to want to copy the template that is generating the markup right now, and you're going to copy it probably from something that's happening in Drupal core, and you're going to copy that over to your specific theme. So the theme that you created, and in this case, it's going to be the sub theme that we eventually work with, right? And that's the whole point of why we don't want to have this stuff completely put into the theme that you downloaded, because if you ever update it, you might lose these changes that we're going to have to do in order to make these things. So in your sub theme that you created, you're going to copy that template. You're going to put it in the templates folder. And then basically what that's going to do is Drupal knows to inherit from your template folder before it goes and looks for those files in Drupal core. So it's going to look into the file that you copied, and any adjustments you make there, which in our case, what we're going to do is we're going to take the value of the link and we're going to make it the href of the anchor tag that surrounds the image. And essentially what that's going to do is it's going to make a clickable image that's going to take us to nber.org. Now, if you're thinking like this sounds like a lot of complicated work for something that's so simple, you're 100% right. And the only real advantage to this complication is what we're doing is we're creating a structure that can be reused dynamically across the site. So if someone ever wanted to create another logo or any kind of image that's linked, they could just upload a new image, upload a new link, and all of a sudden it's working out of the box because we've done this work behind the scenes to make this stuff work. You could do this in a simpler fashion, and we can take a look at the simpler way if that's helpful for you. But this is kind of if you're doing this in a more sustainable, robust, like production way, this is the way that I would approach it. But if it's helpful to look at the simpler way, we can definitely do that too, if that makes sense.
Only because of the time I have to get this up and running.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so
I'm writing everything down,
so simpler way, and this let's take a look. Okay, so let's go back into our structure again one more time, and let's go to our block settings. Once you get there, the block layout, yep, and custom block library, and then if you just add a custom block there at the top, that button. I want to try to see it, and we might have to do I'm not sure if out of the box we'll be able to do this, but you can actually add a basic block, that top one. And you give it whatever description you want there. Yeah, you could just call it logo again if you want for now. That works. And then under the text format, click where it says basic HTML, make it that full HTML. Okay. And then click on where that little image. So do you see in the top bar under body there? Do you see that little image button? It looks like mountains. It has like a little sun. It's very small. It's right next to the quote.
Oh, over here?
No, sorry. Where it says, right on the page where it says body. And then there's like the bold, italics, strike through, all that stuff. If you look to the right, there's a little image button right next to the quote. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Then I'm lost.
So yep, move your cursor to the left.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Yep. So there's, if you move to the left a little bit, there's one that looks like a little image. It's like, yeah, that's the one. Okay, so click on that one. And this should bring, okay, so from here you can browse your computer, pull in the image that you pulled in previously. Yeah. Okay, and then you can add some alternative text. That's just for screen, so that's just for accessibility. You could just say like NBER logo or something like that. That works. And then save that. The alignment doesn't matter quite yet. And then, okay, so now if you view the source, so if you click kind of where you clicked the image before, all the way to the right, click source. Yeah, okay, so this is the image, right? So we can actually write HTML here right now. So do you see where the P tag is? If you can click on the P and you just delete the P and make that an A. Yeah. And then do a space inside of that second bracket. So do A and then space. Oops, sorry, nope. Back a little bit. Delete that. And then inside the A tag, instead of the image, inside the A tag, yep, do a space there. And then href, H-R-E-F, equals. And then do a double quote. And do HTTP : // yep, nber.org, and then double quote, and then yep, and then all the way at the very right hand side, click where the P is and make that an A, and then just, yep, okay, and then save this at the bottom there. Okay. And now, okay, the easiest thing would be go back. Now you can go back to your block layout on those tabs. Yep, exactly. And then just like you placed the block before, click place block, and then look up that block you just created. So home logo, I believe. Yep, that first one there. Place that block, and you can save that. And now if you go back to your home page, this should it should have a linked image. Oop. Okay, so now so the title's appearing, but at least that's a link. Okay, so click, do you see where that little pencil's appearing way over to the right? Yeah, click that, configure block, and just uncheck the title thing just so we don't have that. So yeah, exactly. Click that and save it. So this is the quick and easy way to kind of create this. So you basically now, without all the work that we did before, you've created this one-off kind of clickable block. So you see where it says NBER, you could click that and it would take you back to the website, right? Yeah. So that's that. So, and sorry, I'm not trying to confuse you or make things more complicated than they have to be. I'm basically the way I was doing it before was trying to show a sustainable, repeatable pattern for some of this stuff. And obviously, I know you have a time crunch and everything on this, so maybe some of that is a little too deep for what we need to do here, and I'll try to adjust my suggestions in the future to not be that deep. But like the way that I was approaching it before, and you could always research this if you ever have free time, but it would create a sustainable pattern for creating a lot of these kind of linked images if you ever needed to reuse those in the past, versus what we just did now is kind of a one-off thing that can't really be reused a second time if we ever wanted to. We'd have to do it kind of from scratch again, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I do. Yeah.
Okay. So we can actually go back and we can remove the initial block we had there if we want. So if you can go back into, you can either use the pencil or you could go back and you could go to your block settings, however you want to do it. So yeah, so that first, so NBR home logo with the caps there, you could actually just go to the right where it says configure and just click remove if you wanted to do that. Yeah, and then you save it, and then that one will be out of our way. We won't have to worry about that anymore. And just click remove again, and then yeah. And then if you go back to the home page, you should only see the linked one now. It's not going to be in the right place yet, but it should be the only one there. Great. Great. So I'm trying to think off the top. So the way I would approach basically this second portion now, so we have the linked image, and that works, and that's great, but it's not in the right spot. So the way that I typically approach this is through some theming, and I'm trying to think if there's an easier way that we could possibly do this, and there might be. One thing that I can think of is potentially applying some classes to this through the interface. But basically, what I would do is I would go into the styles, the CSS, and I would write some CSS to float it over to the right. I might even adjust the order, so I might initially have that appear above where the NBER Science funding project is. I might place it above it and then float it to the right, and that would just nicely position it to the right of that initial title. But it's going to require a little bit of custom CSS in order to do that. There are some like layout builder things, but I don't know if there's like a very easy way with this specific theme to do that. And off the top of my head, I can't think of a way. But there might be a different way to approach it too. But I think the way I'm going to suggest to you is, and I don't think we're going to have time to cover it on this call, but would just be to float it over to the right. We can take a look at what that looks like on the front end, but you'll have to go and save it yourself if that makes sense. So the way I do it, let me just kind of do this real quick, I guess. So if you go back to your structure one more time, and you go to the block out layout one more time. Now, if you just adjust this order, put logo home above NBER Science of Science. Yeah, just drag it up a little bit, and then scroll to the bottom of this page and save. Yeah, save that. And then once that's saved, if you go back to the home page now, reload that. Okay, so now it's above. So now if you right-click on the NBER logo, and then do inspect element, and now see over on the right-hand side where it says image style and there's two curly brackets. Way on the right, yeah, up a little bit. At the very top, there's in red letters it says image style. Yeah, click in there. Ooh, up a little bit. Yeah, click inside of those curly brackets. Yep, and then I just write something like float, colon, and then right. Say RIGHT, and then enter. So do you see how that jumped over to the right there?
I do.
So basically, what you need to do, and unfortunately, we only have about 15 minutes left, so I don't think we're going to be able to cover this on the call, but in your theme settings, there's going to be a CSS folder. So in that subtheme that you created, if you look at the actual code, there'll be a folder there called CSS, and basically you're going to want to write something similar to this in that CSS folder. And is that something that's generally familiar to you, or is that kind of like a new concept?
What, CSS?
Yeah, like using CSS.
I'm familiar with it.
Okay. So basically you have to, this stuff that we just did on the front end here, you're going to have to go through and actually save that change to a specific file. And then once you do that, you can have something that looks similar to this. And then you could actually, so if you clicked again to the click right to the right of where it says float right, you could add another thing here, like you could margin top. So you could do margin hyphen top if you write that, and then do a colon. Yeah. Yep. Oop. And then click to the right, and then just say click. Yeah. Margin, then top, and then put a colon. Yeah, and then just say you can do. Oop, you're good there. And then if you click to the right of it, click out of that again. Yep, there, and then say like 30 pixels or something. 30 px. Try that, and then enter. So you see, so maybe it's got to be a little less. So you see how it jumped down a little bit there. So maybe you want to go and click the 30 and make that 25 or make it 23 or something like that, and then. So do you see how like when you make the tweak there, it's changing it on the left hand side? Yep, and then enter. See how that hopped up a little bit? So basically, you can get the visual of exactly how you want it here, and then you copy and paste that code into your theme setting there, and that will make it so it stays after. Because when you refresh, yeah, exactly. So you find it in the CSS file. You can override it. You can write your own, but basically, these changes need to make it somewhere that persists beyond this page load. Because if you were to reload the page right now, these changes that you just made are, they're obviously going to just disappear, right? And the other thing to note is, although it says it's image style right here, that's just a naming convention. You actually have to go and grab a class or something from your actual code on the left-hand side. So that you see where that split pane is there. You have to either grab the image tag or something to make sure that it knows where it's applying those image styles. You can't actually write image style in the CSS. That's not going to help.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, so that's the basics of, I think, we've kind of accomplished placing that logo on the right-hand side. It's clickable. You know generally how to do it. There's going to be a little bit of work on your end to copy and paste the CSS we just wrote and put it into the theme, but I don't think it's going to be overly difficult. If you hit any snags, feel free to ask me questions via email or something. But I think at least that covers section number 1. I think we probably only have time to briefly discuss maybe fonts before I have to actually hop off to another meeting. But we can briefly discuss fonts here if you'd like. So this will also go into kind of theme settings, but the way I would approach fonts would basically be I would look up the font on either like fonts.google.com or a similar service like that. And I would grab some information from that. So do you know the specific name of the font that you want to add to the site? Okay.
Like what?
So one way you can do it is if you actually go to the site that you want to copy. Do you have that site up?
Yeah.
Can we take a look at that?
Let me see what it says. It says,
Yeah. Okay. And then if you... Perfect. And then, okay, so you have it right there. Perfect. So if you, like, the same way we did it before, if you right-click on any of the fonts there, like if you go where it says Overview or whatever, if you right-click on that, like on the actual page there, yeah, like right-click and then say Inspect there. Yeah. Inspect. Okay. And then, so the CSS, so you're using Georgia. So do you see down? So if you look down below where the CSS is being displayed, so the H1, the H2, the H3, H4, H5, and 6, they're all using a font family called Georgia, and they have some fallbacks. They have Times New Roman and Serif as fallback fonts. So the nice thing about that is I think Georgia is like a default font. So I don't think. So if you wanted like a really custom font or like something a little more exclusive, then there are websites. A popular one is just fonts.google.com, and you can look up different specific fonts. But in this case, I think Georgia is actually something that's included with the browsers by default. So you actually don't have to download or do anything special with Georgia. I might be wrong about that, but I think it's actually a font that's included. What's that?
So how would we go about changing that to a Georgia font in here?
So you'll have to. This is another thing you're gonna. Sorry, what's that?
So how would we go about changing the font for this particular website to Georgia?
Yeah, so that's something that you're just like the CSS that you just wrote. It's something you're gonna have to do through your theme. Unless,
Oh, okay.
yeah, some themes will so you know, again, this is me not being familiar with the W3 CSS theme. I have never used this theme that you're using before, so some themes might try to give you a way to do that through the admin interface, but most themes, and I would say the large majority of them, you have to kind of custom code that yourself. So the way you do it, it's much less complicated because Georgia's a default font that we don't have to load ourselves. So just for your own research, typically I would look up something like on fonts.google.com, and they'll actually give you the code that you need to use to put on your site. It uses something called @fontface. And again, this is more complication than I think we need right here. But basically, you can use an @fontface declaration, and that will allow you to add custom fonts that are used across browsers on your website. But since George is such a standard font, at least I think it is, and forgive me if I'm incorrect about that, but I believe all that you need to do is basically go in and override whatever font's being used right now with Georgia. You just set the declaration, similar like you floated the image to the right. You'd basically say, hey, all content, all body content or whatever, make it use Georgia font with a fallback of Times New Roman. And that will automatically, as long as it's specific enough to override the initial font, that will start to appear on your site without any other magic needed.
Okay. So I'm thinking I could probably just let me just bring this over. Let me just
Yeah, so in that CSS folder there, because I think this theme doesn't use any pre-processing. Some themes pre-process style code. This one I don't think does, which is nice. And inside here, you could add a new file, or you could edit an existing file. And it doesn't really matter. You could go and you could find where the font's declared the first time, or you could even, in like a subtheme, you could override that font. So as long as your style definition is more specific than the one that was original, your style will win, and it will be the one that's displayed to the user.
I don't know why it won't open it though.
It looks like that folder's empty. I think. I think they're. It looks like, again, this is me not being familiar with the theme, but it looks like that folder might be empty. And they're leaving that for you to add your own file to it. But again, that might be just me not understanding the structure of these files. So you could really write it in any of the CSS files as long as it's specific enough to override the other stuff. So
I had a custom theme already for the colors. And which is this. This is the original. I don't understand why I can't open it. Maybe because it's being used?
The file's not opening. I guess I'm not following. What do you mean the file's not opening?
Okay, if I want to open it with my editor.
Okay. Is it giving you an error?
Here it is. Okay. Well, this is just for the colors.
Yeah, and so is this a file that you? It looks like this is a file that you wrote specifically yourself.
I created it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you could continue adding your, if you've created that and it's loading in your site and everything, then you could continue using that file there and just adding the font style, and also adding the image floating style there as well. You could continue using that.
I'll
Yeah.
look at. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, so you could continue.
No, it does. Yep.
Yeah, you could continue using that file to write like these new style overrides. And of course, like if the style is really specific or they're using important tags and things like that, it can be more difficult to override these. But for the most part, I think you should be able to override those pretty easily in that file.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that would be the next step. So basically, what you could do is you could just say like, body, yeah, brackets, and say something like font family, Georgia, Times New Roman, and if that's specific enough, then it'll work. But you'll know by looking at the page source. So if you inspect the element and your style is crossed out, that means that something else is more specific than the style that you're adding, and you'll have to make yours more specific. You can do that a couple different ways. You could add like classes or IDs to your markup. You could also like have a more nested structure in your CSS. So like by making, like for instance, if you have an anchor tag that you're trying to override, if you just say anchor tag, it might not be very specific. But if you say like body div whatever and then anchor tag, then that becomes more specific and it has a greater chance of overriding the style.
Okay. Okay, great.
Cool. Okay, great. So I know you had some other questions about images. I have to jump off though at this point. Maybe we can schedule another time to go over some of that, and hopefully you've had a chance to look at adding some of these styles for the fonts and the image floating. So once you've had a chance to look at that a little bit more, and you can let me know if there's any follow-up questions or if you're struggling with any of it still, and we could just go back over that again real quick, and then maybe move on to the image stuff if that sounds like a good plan.
Okay, yeah.
Cool.
That sounds great.
Great.
I really would like to know how to put image in the on the home main page.
Yeah. So, and one thing I'd say is you could do something similar to what we did with the logo. So, like, you could edit the page and add the image with that WYSIWYG field button like we did.
I tried that really quick. I went to, I know you have to go, so I don't want to delay you.
Sure.
Well, I'll just go here. I go to home, and I went here to edit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you...
Sorry.
That's okay.
Edit. It's a little slow, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So you might be using a window that I'm not seeing right now, potentially, because
Oh,
that's okay. Okay, perfect, great. Yeah, and then from here, yeah, you could do something similar. Like
and
you,
I went
Yep.
load an image.
Yep, exactly.
See how I put it on the top? I want it on the right, a little bit down.
Yeah.
A nice little border.
Yep. So you can when you click on the image that you did have, yeah. So first of all, the full HTML is probably going to help a lot, but the image properties you should be able to yeah, and you can say okay, continue to that, and you click on the image properties again. So you should be able to do those basic alignments like the left, right, center. I don't know how good they'll be. If the image is very large and it's taking up the full container, then it might not align completely appropriately. But you can try saving that and see what happens there, and I can tell you what I think is happening. Yeah, so the image, so it is going to the right, but the image is rather large. So a couple things you could do.
You know what, though? That looks a lot better than it did before.
Oh, okay.
When I was doing it before, it's actually covering the left of the text. So, I mean, I could actually make the image smaller.
Exactly, yeah. You could do that. You could, that's the way I'd recommend it, actually. So, unfortunately, I think by default, you don't have the nice image styles that we looked at earlier to manipulate this image. So you could either upload, go to Photoshop, make a smaller image, and then re-upload it. Or you could actually go into the page source like we did previously, and you could set your own inline CSS styles on this image tag. Although I don't recommend it because when you start restricting image sizes with CSS, you're still loading a large image. So you take a performance hit by doing that. It's not really the best way forward. So in this case, if you want just the quick and easy, I think go into Photoshop, scaling this down a little bit and re-uploading it might be your best path for that.
Okay.
But yeah, so does that feel like that's at least an okay path forward for some of the stuff that you wanted to look at? Do you feel like there's anything?
Like I said before, when I was trying to upload an image doing it this way, the image was, the text was, even when I put a line right, the image was covering the text and not.
Oh, yeah. There might have been some funky style going on. Yeah. See, that's the danger of these kind of WYSIWYG fields, the free form text fields, is there's a lot of markup and stuff that happens on the back end, and you can very quickly lose consistency when things start getting messed with a little bit. So I prefer structured fields for that reason, but I think, if this is the quick, easy way to do it, then this is probably the best way to go. Okay.
I'm sure I'll be in touch with more questions.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, definitely happy to connect again on any of this stuff. Do you want me? So I was recording this. Do you want me to just upload that to YouTube or something, or would you rather not have that on a publicly accessible YouTube thing?
I have no problem with it being uploaded.
Okay.
What do you do?
I don't have a problem with it. I'll upload it, and that way you can refer back to it anytime, and I'll send you a link to it.
That'd be wonderful.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much, Debbie. I appreciate it.
Oh, no. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And, so let me know. Feel free to ping me, and we'll schedule some time to look at this stuff again, answer any follow-up questions you have, and then we can move forward with new features and things like that you might have questions on in the future.
Great. Thank you, Jim.
Great. All right. Thanks. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Keep cool.
All right. Yeah, I'll try. You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. Bye.